Candy Girl here with my 2 cents on a very unfortunate situation that transpired. If it wasn't last week, it was the week before last, but it's still a very fresh issue. A lady named Pamela Turner was shot and killed by a law enforcement officer during an attempted arrest. And I wanted to stop and give you my 2 cents on the issue because, unfortunately, I probably have an unpopular opinion as a black woman, but nonetheless, I'm going to be equally harsh on both sides. And I'm hoping that you'll walk with me on this. Go ahead, leave your comments, your thoughts, ideas, considerations, concerns, criticisms. Just keep it respectful of all the people who are commenting on this platform. But before I get into that, just real quick, welcome to my new viewers, all my new subscribers. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for taking an interest in me. And also to the people who have been subscribed for a while, whether that be for a year, 2 years, 3 years, from day one. Thank you so much. You know, I've got people who privately message me and say, hey, when's the last time that you uploaded a video? You know, it might be time. You know what I'm saying? Even my husband will do that. You know, just being like, look, you need to upload a video. And I really appreciate that because it keeps me motivated. I'm a very busy person. I do a lot of community work. I work very hard at my normal job. I'm a new wife. And a lot of these things take up a lot of my time. But when I got people who are stopping and saying, hey, I want to hear what you have to say about this, that, and the third, I really appreciate that because it keeps me motivated to keep my platform going. So don't be shy. If you have a video idea, please leave it in the comments on any one of my videos and I'd be happy to consider it. All right, so let's go ahead and give you some background information on this situation. Pamela Shante Turner, a woman who lived in Texas. There was an officer who was patrolling the neighborhood that she lived in. He saw her and knew her from previous situations and knew that she had a warrant out for her arrest for an assault. With that being said, he tried to apprehend her and arrest her, and that's when it got pretty ugly. She broke free of his control while he was trying to arrest her. He used the taser on her, but I guess that didn't work. They struggled a bit. And the young woman, Miss Turner, actually got a hold of the taser and attempted to use it on the officer. Now, what I'm not sure of, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong, but once you discharge a taser, you cannot recoil it and refire it that quickly. So even if she tried to use a taser, it would not have been successful because of the fact that he had already discharged it on her, just a couple seconds before that. But nonetheless, I have reviewed the video several times, and I just wanted to get a clearer understanding of what happened because I did notice that she reached for his side, and at that point he backed up and then fired his gun at her about 4 or 5 times. This officer is now on a paid administrative leave while they investigate the issue, but something tells me that there will be no indictment, there will be no conviction, mostly because of what I saw in the video. She did reach for his side while they were in a tussle with one another, and he could honestly say that he feared for his life, and therefore he was justified in using deadly force. So that's where my unpopular opinion really starts. Because we know what we're dealing with here. We know that even historically, the law enforcement was actually established to incarcerate blacks. And this was around, slavery time, and then even after they were emancipated, the police force was used to target the black community, to imprison them, and then to re-enslave them. So, and even to kill them. So historically, the police force has been racist. Now, what does that say about them now? I would say not much, because now we have black enforcement officers, obviously, and we have white enforcement officers who are not racist. There have been very gentle and kind law enforcement officers that I've had contact with. As a matter of fact, my own father was a law enforcement officer, and I currently work in law enforcement. not in a street patrol context, but there are people in law enforcement who are good people who do not mean any harm and that are there to protect and serve. So it is very ignorant for people to then assume that law enforcement is just blanketly racist. You cannot make that blanket assumption on all of law enforcement. And if anything, that just tears us apart even more and leads to situations such as these. Okay, so but we know what we're working with here because we have known even in recent events that law enforcement will shoot and kill you if they feel threatened enough. So if that's something that is highly known in mainstream media, social media, things like that, if you know that, then don't get into a physical altercation with a law enforcement officer because you may get the very best of that law enforcement officer. And just because of pride and fear and prejudice in that person, whether they know it or not, they will then use the quickest and easiest mode to disarm you and to even kill you, which is to use their gun on you. So if you know that this is what we're dealing with, it's incumbent on you to survive that moment. Don't let your pride get in the way. Don't let your anger or bad blood with that officer that you already have. Don't let that cost you your very life. Because right, wrong, or indifferent on that officer's part, you're dead. You're gone. So you really don't have an opportunity to seek justice in the matter for yourself. You may, the community might have justice on it, but you yourself, we can't bring you back to life. So if you are in a situation where you're faced with a law enforcement officer, the key is to survive the moment. And if you feel like in that particular situation, your civil rights were violated, whether he violated your privacy, whether he brutally attacked you, whether they entered into your home without a warrant, whatever the case may be, it's upon you to make sure that you do whatever you can to try to survive that moment instead of trying to prove a point and trying to win over that person in that moment. That is the stupidest thing that you could do, and it can cost you your life, and it cost her life. She has 2 adult children, she had grandchildren, she had friends and family, and even if she had none of that, she's still a human being who had the right to life, liberty, and property through the Constitution. So if you want to uphold those rights and to make sure that you are not being targeted, even if you are targeted, make sure that you survive the moment. Do your part, and then fight the rest of it in court or through social media, whatever way that you want to do to expose the situation. That's when you take it upon yourself to do it. But at this point, this lady will never be able to do that because she is dead. And so whether he was right or wrong, you've got to do whatever it is in your power to survive that moment. So let's stop with this, how dare he, I'm going to fight him, I'm going to show him, and all this other stuff. Forget all of that, because we know they will shoot and kill you if given the opportunity. Give them one good reason to take your life. This officer had bad blood with her to begin with. He knew her. She knew him. Okay? So there's no telling what his main objective was and what he was trying to do, but don't give him the opportunity to do it and to walk away scot-free. Come on. So really, it's upon you to make sure that you survive the moment. Don't give them a reason. On the other hand, if you as an officer know that when you signed up for this job, you knew, watch Cops, okay? You know that people run away from the cops. They try to fight you. They try to talk back to you. They talk crazy. They try to give you all kinds of lies and excuses like, oh, I'm pregnant, but you're not really pregnant. You damn near 45. Chances are you're not pregnant. You know what I'm saying? People are going to say and do whatever they can to evade you as a law enforcement officer. So it's incumbent upon you to make sure that you're fully prepared for whatever situation may arise, and your first or maybe even second resort should not be to kill them. Okay. Now, granted, he tried to use his taser first, which I appreciate because not many officers would even try to do that. Then he did try to have physical combat with her. But the fact of the matter is, she's a 45-year-old woman who does not have the same combat training as an officer should. So therefore, he more than likely should have been able to subdue her in some other means. But and especially because of the fact that he was able to back up from her grasp, that should have let you know, okay, pull your baton out, beat her ass, I don't care, but you didn't need to shoot her. You know what I'm saying? And I think that at some point he was just tired of fighting her, and he was scared, and so he had a gun and he used it. You know what I'm saying? But what I think would be extremely beneficial for the police force in general, nationwide, is to have better combat training and to have anger management training as well, because I think that the tensions were running high. And not only that, but he was just tired of fighting her and he felt like he couldn't overcome her. But you are a man who has more upper body strength than this skinny young lady. So chances are, if you would have had the best combat training that America has to offer, which I would have thought that you would have had, you should have been able to subdue her and arrest her. Put her ass in a chokehold for all I care. Make her lose consciousness for a couple seconds while you get the handcuffs on her. I've seen other countries who have had men running naked around the streets with a knife in their hand, cutting people up, and they've been able to subdue that person, arrest them by whatever means that they needed to, but they surely didn't kill them. I know other countries that their police officers don't even have guns. And they're in a crowded city full of drunkenness and violence and things like that, and they don't even use guns unless they're transporting money. So to think that this is something that is just utterly necessary for people to shoot and kill people that they cannot subdue is kind of cowardly. And so there needs to be more combat training, just like you would in the Marines. You know what I'm saying? You need to have combat training to be able to take control of a situation without killing somebody. What a concept. You could have called for backup. You know what I'm saying? Before you even, interacted with that person to make sure that there was another officer that could have helped you. But even then, we know that doesn't help. Look at Eric Gardner. But anyways, but that's how I feel about the situation. Now, people are also saying that this is an act of racism. And what I want to make abundantly clear is you don't know that. Okay? You don't know if that officer was racist. And in order for the continued movement for racial equality and equity in our country, we've got to stop talking about this person is racist, this person is racist, this is a racist institution, that all of this stuff is racist. Get your facts together before you say something like that, because I think that it's easier for us to say that this is just racist because he happens to be white and she's black, rather than for you to take a little bit of time to do a little bit of research before you can even make that conclusion. Okay, let me be more specific. If you think that this person did this because she's black, what proof do you have of that? Did he call her the N-word? Did he use any racial slurs? Did he even make reference to her race? Had he talked to anybody else and said this black bitch or whatever? Excuse my French for all the Christians and those with with sensitivities. But I will say that I didn't hear any of that, and nobody has come forward with those allegations. So for someone to say that that person is racist is kind of ignorant. More so, you don't know how he has handled situations with white alleged criminals that he was trying to apprehend and engage in a physical altercation with. You don't know. He could have shot each and every person that he's ever had a physical altercation with, white, black, polka dot, clear, pink, whatever. So before you say that this person was racist and had she been white, they would have done something different. Well, let's try to look back and see how he has handled other situations. If he has gotten into fisticuffs with whites, and he has did everything in his power, short of deadly force, to apprehend them, and that he was successful. But then a similar situation happens with a black, and he doesn't take more than 2 minutes to try to shoot them, then we can talk about that. But we don't even have data to suggest that white combats with a police officer ends peacefully without the use of deadly force versus with blacks. We don't have that. You want to know why? Because the police departments are not required to report specifically what has happened in every single physical altercation with a member of the public, and what that person's race was, the level of physical contact that they had with that person prior to discharging a gun. We don't have any of that data. It's not required. And not only that, it would be very hard to make a uniform reporting system where everything is objectively measured. So it's hard to say the level of a physical altercation, how much of a threat that person was, and then the end result. We don't have that data. Now, what we do have, just in case anybody does not realize this, is that we know that blacks and minorities make up 14% of the population, but they are actually more than 50% of the criminal justice system, the participants. I don't even know what the word is. But my point is that blacks make up only 14% of the population, but they make up more than 50% of those in the criminal justice system. That would be a better way to put it. So, with that being said, we know that law enforcement targets blacks more often because statistics also show that blacks are no more likely to commit, especially violent crime, than whites. So, if whites and blacks commit crimes equally, but blacks are being incarcerated more than whites, then that would lead us to believe that law enforcement is targeting minorities more than the majority or whites. So what that means is that law enforcement is pursuing blacks more often, but the data does not show what physical altercations they got into with whites and how that was handled versus blacks and how that was handled. And a lot of times people are not reporting all of those things because it's not mandatory. And again, it's not something that can be uniformly implemented in the ways that they measure the altercations and the end result. So let's be a little bit more informed before we make assumptions on what that police officer's motivation was, okay? But my three main points is we know what we're dealing with law enforcement. So what your job is to survive the moment. But at the same time, the police force needs way more combat training, and to make sure that police officers understand that before you use deadly force, you have to be faced with a deadly situation. And as far as I could tell, number one, the taser had already been discharged, so there was no ongoing threat. And then number two, police officers have like several safety locks on their gun before it can even be used. And the general public doesn't know how to even get the gun off of their hip because there's some special lever or something like that that you have to press. And then on top of that, before you fire the gun, there's some other safety mechanisms there as well. So was she really likely to get his gun? I don't think so. But anyways, there needs to be better combat training. And then lastly, before we jump to an assumption about this being a racially motivated event, maybe we ought to get our ducks in a row before we even make that assumption. But nonetheless, we know that historically and statistically currently, law enforcement has been targeting the black community way more than the white community. And that can lead a reasonable person to believe that the end result and the even initial interaction may have had some maybe subconscious prejudice within it. But anyways, you all let me know what you think in the comments below. How do you feel about the situation? Do you feel that the officer was justified? Do you think that we need more training? And do you feel like there is some inequality in the criminal justice system as it pertains to police brutality against minorities versus whites? Y'all let me know what you think in the comments. Always keep it pretty, classy, and respectful. And until next time, you all, love and blessings.